The friend zone, a relationship dynamic in which one person wants to escalate things to a more romantic or sexual level while the other person does not. Now, I'm going to be talking specifically to a man getting friend zoned by a woman, but just know that everything I'm saying basically applies to the other perspective as well. It's just not as common. And even if you yourself don't get friend zoned, you're still going to want to listen, because in this video, you're going to see how the friend zone and just getting rejected in general have a lot of overlap, right? There's just a little few distinctions here that we're gonna clarify. And in this video, I'm gonna share with you what is the friend zone, what causes it, how to escape it and avoid it in the future, as well as the deeper rooted problem that leads to the friend zone in the first place and what to do about it. So the term friend zone is a little bit of a misnomer. It's misleading because it actually isn't a friendship at all. A friendship is based on unconditional love and understanding and support, and that is not what the traditional, typical friend zone type of dynamic is, either because the woman is taking advantage of the guy's niceness and even in some rare cases maybe leading him on or manipulating him or flirting with him just to keep him jumping through hoops, or because from the man's perspective, he's simply being nice or doing things for the woman in order to try to get her to like him. In either case, this is not a friendship because both people are enacting these sort of covert contracts, which essentially just means that they're entered into this agreement that is unspoken. It's an implicit agreement that they are doing things in order to get things in return. And that's not what a true friendship is based on. Covert contracts are beyond the scope of this video, but if you think that you are in a relationship where you've entered into these implicit agreements, then a great question to ask yourself in order to gauge whether or not you are under one of these is, what behaviors do I enact with the secret expectation of getting something in return? Or from the other perspective, what behaviors do other people enact that make me feel obligated to give something in return? Now, I don't want to give off the impression that women are responsible somehow for the friend zone or that they're just super manipulative, because that's not the case. In fact, I think for the average woman out there, the reason this dynamic even exists is because they simply don't want to hurt the man's feelings and fail to properly assert the boundary and make it clear to that man that either you treat me just as a friend or this relationship ends now. And so they kind of default to this neutral, sort of wishy-washy, unclear position, which then opens up the wiggle room for a man to sort of misinterpret that or just be in denial about it and wiggle himself in and continuously try or hope that the relationship is going to change in some way. I would go as far as to say that it's actually the man's responsibility and his fault for the friend zone existing in the first place, because it's his lack of leadership in the relationship or his lack of boundaries and autonomy and self-respect that is allowing this dynamic to exist in the first place. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about what actually causes the friend zone. Now, getting friend zoned is caused by a failure on the man's part to express his sexual energy properly and clearly to that woman, and then assert his boundaries over what he actually wants. And so if he gets rejected, he walks away instead of actually trying to cling or linger or do this not very clear method of seduction where he thinks that he needs months or even years to try to convince a woman that he is valuable enough for her to be with him. This is why I say that being friend zoned and rejection are actually fairly similar, because getting rejected and then staying in there instead of actually just walking away is basically what the friend zone is, right? The only time that you would be in the friend zone and you didn't get rejected is if you didn't actually even try to escalate things, in which case you're friend zoned, but not because she ever even explicitly put you there. Whereas if you just get rejected and then you walk away, then you basically take your self-integrity with you and your self-respect, and you can get rejected, that's fine, but you've actually learned from the experience and you move it on. If you're a man who's stuck in the friend zone, then there's one really clear, very simple reason that you're there, and that's simply because you are putting yourself there. You are both the prisoner and the warden of this dynamic situation. There is no one holding a gun up to your head, forcing you or keeping you in this relationship dynamic, and at any given moment, you have multiple options available to you. So I'll go ahead and explain some of those options right now. Option one is to simply walk away. Move on from the relationship, cut her out, have no contact, and just allow yourself to get recentered, because you've lost your center if you are in the friend zone, obsessing about a woman that is not interested in you in the way that you are interested in her. This is the easiest way out of the friend zone because you literally have all the power to do this, and you can do that right now. Option two is to friend zone her. Now, I don't mean this in some vengeful, sneaky, manipulative way, but simply from the perspective of if a woman has friend zoned you, or just made it clear to you that she's only interested in friendship if you're continuing that relationship, then automatically in that moment, frame her as simply a friend, right? And view her in your mind as only a friend, and that you're the one who's actually only going to be friends with her, even if you're attracted with her, right? Attraction has nothing to do with it. And if you do this, you now reclaim your power and you start showing up in a way where you are just heart-centered and kind and loving and giving and nurturing, and perhaps a lovely friendship will flourish out of that situation. Now, of course, if you feel that you simply cannot do that because you're too overly invested or obsessed with this woman, or the attraction is just so distracting, then I would recommend that you just simply go to option one and walk away. Mark Manson, the author of The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, has an amazing article called The Law of Fuck Yes or No that basically explains this exact thing. Here's how it goes. The law of fuck yes or no states that when you want to get involved with someone new in whatever capacity, they must inspire you to say fuck yes in order for you to proceed with them. The law of fuck yes or no also states that when you want to get involved with someone new in whatever capacity, they must also respond with a fuck yes in order for you to proceed with them. As you can see, the law of fuck yes or no implies that both parties must be enthusiastic about the prospect of one another's company. Why? Because attractive, non-needy, high self-worth people don't have time for people who they are not excited to be with and who are not excited to be with them. Fuck yeah. This advice is gold because most of the dating pickup advice out there is trying to turn you into somebody that you're not so that you can attract someone you're not compatible with and who doesn't see your value. Instead, you need to learn how to express more of your authentic nature in a more shameless, confident, and attractive way that attracts the women who actually see your value and who like you for who you really are. Those are the kinds of women that you want to be investing your time and energy into, as long as you are a fuck yes about them as well. Option three, polarize her. By polarizing her, I mean that you basically force her hand to give you a clear yes or a clear no. Now, there's an art to doing this, which I'll talk about in a moment, but first off, this will only work for you if you have not really tried to escalate things already with her. So some guys, because of their fear of coming off creepy or just their not knowing how to actually escalate things, have found themselves in this friend zone dynamic simply because they have never actually tried, and the woman hasn't even had the opportunity to reject them. If that's you, then this option is going to work best for you, as long as you're willing to potentially risk losing the relationship for the sake of taking it to that next level. In other words, you got to risk it for the biscuit. So in summary, you have three options. Number one, walk away. Number two, friend zone her. Or number three, polarize her, force her hand a little bit and get a clear yes or no so you can know how to move forward. Now, my advice for polarizing her is going to vary depending on how well you know this woman, how long you guys have been friends, whether or not you've sort of tried already to escalate things or not. There's a lot of factors and variables that I can't cover all of them, but I will say a good rule of thumb is this following process here. Step one, create some distance and give her and yourself some space. It's important that when you're in this friend zone dynamic, right, to actually reset the way that she thinks about you. And if you're already caught up in that relationship dynamic, it's going to be hard for her to have to shift and actually be able to see you as more than just a friend and as a potential lover. And so creating some distance, giving some time away without messaging, without hanging out, is a good way to try to reset that image that she has, that perception, that preconceived notion that she has of you, so that when you re-enter that relationship, you can show up in a different way, and it'll be slightly easier to actually get her to be open to seeing you in a different way. I would recommend maybe a week or two at the minimum in order to try to reset that process. This doesn't mean that you have to completely ghost her or ignore her. It simply means that you are reserving your energy and you are not actually seeking out or investing in her, right? You're letting her sort of come to you, but you're also very clearly within your boundaries, and you're not exerting any unnecessary energy to reach out to her. And if she doesn't reach out to you, then all the better. Give it some space, let it breathe, and don't reach out to her until you're ready to go into step 2. So step number 2 is to show up completely different. And what I mean by that is you have to show up with your sexual energy vibrating through your body and shamelessly be expressing that with her in a non-creepy way. And what I mean by that is simply that you have to be okay and accept to yourself that you want to attract this woman, because part of the reason you haven't done this already is because there could be a bit of shame there. There could be the fear of coming off creepy, the fear of like what she's gonna think of you or say of you. If you want to attract this woman and polarize her, then you have to show up as that carrier of the masculine energy, shamelessly owning your sexual energy and not be afraid to escalate things further with her. Now, of course, you want to do this in a very calibrated way, which means that you're observing her body language and you're listening to the cues that she's giving you and whether she's giving you green lights or red lights. I like to call the escalation process the red light, green light game, because it's essentially like that. You take a small step forward and you see, is she giving you a green light? Was she receptive to that? So this might just be like, you know, a lighthearted, non-detached compliment like, hey, you look kind of cute in that dress, right? Just a little boom. How does she respond to that? Is she accepted? Did she smile? Is she kind of being flirty? Or is she shooting that down and just being like, oh yeah, you know, and basically telling you that like, I'm not receiving that because I only see you as a friend, right? Which would be the equivalent of a red light. Now, the escalation process and the red light, green light game is beyond the scope of this video, but I just want to give you a little taste that that's the approach that you're going to have to take. And you're going to have to be very vigilant here because this is essentially a clashing of frames. And what I mean by that is the frame is basically the way that you are thinking about the dynamic and the situation. And so she had her old way of viewing you, which is just a friend, and she's going to naturally want to suck you into that frame. And you're going to have to hold your frame, basically saying that, no, I'm not your friend. I'm here to be more, or I'm here to be nothing. That's why I say you have to be ready to walk away from this, or potentially have her just not want to be your friend anymore, because you're no longer allowing the option for friendship. You're saying clearly, either this or that. You're giving her an ultimatum. Now, a little caveat here, if you guys have been lifelong friends, something like the Peter Parker, Mary Jane sort of scenario, and you really value that friendship, and it's actually a friendship. It's not just like a friend zone dynamic, but you've felt feelings, have developed feelings over time for her and just have never expressed it because you don't want to ruin the friendship or potentially ruin the friendship. In that case, it may be better for you to just be more honest with her, right? If you feel safe in that relationship to be able to express yourself. So, you know, have a seat with her and just tell her like, hey, I'd like to talk to you about something, you know, and start off by telling her how much you value the friendship. Say, I really value the time that we spent together. I really value the friendship that we've cultivated over these years. And at the same time, I have to honor myself by telling you this, that I've developed feelings for you, romantic feelings that I want to explore. And make sure she knows that you're not trying to rush her. Tell her very clearly that you're not trying to jump into a relationship or anything. You're simply expressing how you feel and letting her know honestly and seeing if she might be open to that, right? And give her some time. Once you tell her that, give her some time to integrate it and absorb it. You're not here to try to convince her. You're simply putting it on the table, right? It's like basically just putting the cards down and you're saying, you're putting the ball in her court, and give her some space, give her some time to integrate that. And maybe she responds in that moment, or maybe she needs to still process it, right? And in which case, if she says that, then give her some space, let it breathe, let her come back to you. Now, step 3 depends on what answer she gives you. If she gives you a green light, a red light, a fuck yes, or a no. If she gives you a green light and she's open to actually receiving your advances or open to going on a date with you or something like that, then you need to make sure that you are expressing that masculine energy, that sexual energy, and your leadership energy, right? And again, the expressing of the sexual energy doesn't necessarily mean that you're making perverted jokes or trying to like grab her ass or anything. It simply means that you're comfortable, number one, with just basic touch with her, right? Like hugs and, holding her hand or things of that nature, or, putting your hand on her thigh, and if she's receptive, or on her lower back. Again, touching is beyond the scope of this video, but just know that you're going to have to be comfortable with that. But even more important than that, and on a deeper level, what I'm really talking about when I say you need to be comfortable with expressing your sexual energy, it's actually what I'm saying is you need to be comfortable with tapping into that sexual energy and feeling it in your body and connecting to that energy. And then letting that energy come out in the way that you talk to her, come out in the way that you look at her. For example, if I do something like this and I start to look like this, and if you were a woman and I'm looking at you in this way, right, I start to communicate like, I'm very attracted to you. I don't have to say anything. I don't have to say I'm attracted to you. I don't have to say you're beautiful or start talking about sexual things. The woman can feel it because I can feel it, and I own it, and I accept it and embrace it, and then I transfer that, I transmute that, I communicate that through my eye contact, through my language, through my tonality. So the way I talk to her is a little bit more playful. I take a little bit more of a seductive tone, right? I maybe tease her a little bit and just have a good time. But what I'm not gonna do is simply remain in this friend frame. Now, if she gives you a no, then basically at this point you have to go to the other options that I said, either walk away, or you can, if you feel like you can truly and honestly be there as a friend for her, then take option number 2 and just see her as a friend. But you got to be very careful here that you're not sneakily or secretly hoping that something is going to change. An alternate option here could be to just take some space and time away from her for a little while and tell her honestly, like, hey, I respect that. I appreciate your honesty. And just for me, I have to take some space here to honor myself so I can recenter myself, and potentially we can re-enter this friendship, or we can continue this friendship down the line. Regardless of whether she gives you a yes or a no, she will respect you because you have now actually utilize your masculine energy to initiate things and to actually go for what you want. But more importantly, you will respect yourself more because you actually had the courage to put yourself out there and risk rejection. So the last thing I want to touch upon here is the deep-rooted problem and the sneaky, under the surface reason that a lack of sexual expression is happening if you're getting friend zoned. And the real reason is there's usually some kind of shame underneath there, right? Some kind of shame over your sexual energy, perhaps because of some religious conditioning or a sexually traumatizing event that happened, or just shame in general over who you are and your desires. And so if you're experiencing any level of sexual shame, it's definitely going to interfere with your ability to be able to both tap in and feel your emotions and your sexual energy, and also to be able to communicate that and transfer that to the woman so that she can feel it, which is what creates attraction in the first place. So it's critical that you address this deep wound of sexual shame before you just go out there and start trying to express your sexual energy, because you'll probably feel very guilty, very shameful the moment you try to do that if you haven't actually healed that wound yet. And this is going to be important if you want to create attraction with the kinds of women that you really want. So here's your action step for this video. It's basically to allow yourself to feel into and become incredibly aware of the shame or guilt that arises when you think about expressing your sexual energy or when you're actually feeling it. And learn to tap into that, learn to go into and actually embrace those feelings. And in real time, you need to be reframing the thoughts that are under the surface there, that are shouting at you from the subconscious, telling you that what you're doing is wrong, that what you're doing is bad, that you should be feeling guilty, that you're a creep, right? You need to take all of those negative narratives and you need to flip the script and you need to say, my sexual energy is beautiful. My sexual expression as a man is natural and wonderful. You need to say, I am good for doing this, right? Sex is beautiful. Masturbation is beautiful. Attraction is beautiful. Initiating sex is beautiful. Now, obviously, use whatever words or affirmations work for you, but over time, as you keep doing that in real time, in the moments where your body is having that visceral reaction and is experiencing the shame and the guilt, with time, you're going to be basically training your nervous system to go in a different direction and to start thinking different thoughts, and then eventually to start actually feeling different feelings. I actually came from a very religious upbringing where sex was a dirty, taboo, perverted thing, and I wasn't supposed to have any of it before getting married. Not to mention that no one ever really taught me anything productive or useful about my sexual energy, about masturbation, about sex, and so I had a lot of distorted views on it growing up. This led to me feeling incredibly guilty and shameful every time I enacted any kind of sexual act with a partner, and also led to other further self-esteem issues that I wasn't even aware of. So if you're interested in learning about how I can help you, feel free to reach out and we can have a chat and I can show you exactly how I've been able to help myself and other men to be able to purge the sexual shame, tap into and express it properly, the sexual energy that is, to a woman so that you can create attraction with her. And don't forget to subscribe if you vibe, like or dislike, and leave your comments and questions below as I will be using your feedback for future video ideas. So thanks for watching, and until next time, stay hungry, stay humble.